This is Michael Spedden, and welcome to Fowl Players Radio, your one-stop shop for all of your pop culture needs. We feature interviews from musicians, actors, comics, dancers, authors, and much, much more, up-and-coming artists and beloved favorites. We've got it all, people on stage, backstage, out front, and behind the scenes. Sit back and relax. Let's have some fun. And welcome to Season 11 of Fowl Players Radio. We're kicking off 2024 with an interview with someone my friend, a great friend of the show, and past guest Buffalo Lee Jordan introduced me to, guitarist Keith Mack. Keith is a Rehoboth, Delaware native who in the early 80s moved to New York City and teamed up with Patty Smyth and formed Scandal, who had hits with Goodbye to You, Love's Got a Line on You, and The Warrior. During his time with Scandal, they toured with Adam Ant, Hall & Oates, John Cougar Mellencamp, to name a few. He later toured with Joe Cocker and Paul Young, and Cyndi Lauper appeared on The Tonight Show with both Johnny Carson and Jay Leno as hosts, as well as Solid Gold, American Bandstand, and Dick Clark's Rockin' New Year's Eve. He recently released an album with his old CRIES bandmate, Ed Shockley, called What Happened. It's a very well-done album and is available on most music platforms. His website is keithmack.net, where you can find his music, bio, and tour dates. The Fowl Players of Perryville are back in action and have upcoming shows on the Western Maryland Scenic Railroad, Fifth Company Brewing in Perryville, Maryland, and the Van Diver Inn in Havre de Grace, and others. If you're interested in seeing a show, the website is fowlplayersofperryville.com. And if you're interested in booking us, fowlplayersperryville@yahoo.com, or call us at 443-600-0446. Remember, every Tuesday from 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern is The Back of the Rack, the Michael Spedden Show on 97underground.com, featuring yours truly. We feature songs you forgot you liked, classics that never die, interviews with up-and-coming and classic beloved bands. Go to 97underground.com and download the free app today and listen to us wherever you go. We thank you for watching and listening to Fowl Players Radio. Our main website is fowlplayersradio.com, and our YouTube channel is youtube.com/@fowlplayersradio. Remember to support our guests in their endeavors. Links to their books, albums, tickets to their shows, and much, much more can be found in the show notes of every episode. We'll be right back with Keith Mack right after these words.
Hi, this is A.D. Adams.
And Paul Williams with Escape the Hive.
You are listening to Fowl Players Radio.
Hi, this is Paul Castiglia, and you're listening to Fowl Players Radio, the one-stop shop for all your pop culture needs.
And welcome back to another episode of Fowl Players Radio. We are now in Season 11, and tonight's guest is Keith Mack. Keith is really a journeyman guitar player. You know, he's had a career, since, in the 80s, and starting out in Rehoboth Beach, moving to New York, performing with all kinds of people, and we're going to find out who during the show tonight. And I appreciate you taking the time. You know, we're practically neighbors, huh? You're originally from Rehoboth Beach. I'm a Marylander, so our states kind of touch there, you know.
We are. We're neighbors.
Yep. So this, you've I was reading your bio off of your website, and growing up in Rehoboth Beach, moved to New York, and you teamed up with Patty Smyth. So how did this happen exactly? How did you meet? Was this like an audition call or something, or an ad?
Not exactly. I'm trying to think the best way. Story. When I moved to New York, there's a guy named Doug James. That's not Ohio, probably, who lived in my neighborhood, literally like 2 blocks away. And he's like 8 years older than me. And he's been up in New York, songwriter. He wrote How Am I Supposed to Live Without You, Michael Bolton. And
Sure.
And he's had a number of successful songs. He's written songs Joe Cocker's done, Dionne Warwick, many others. And he encouraged me to come up to New York. And I, even before, when he was up there, I would come up to New York and record with him and in studios and on some of his demos and things from time to time. And I even worked with him down here in Delaware in studios. So I moved up there. He real quick, I graduated, right after I graduated from college in 1982. In September, I started going up to New York, and he introduced me to this lady, Jeannie Napoli, that he wrote with a lot, and they recorded a lot as well. And she had this party, and I went to the party and I met Benji King, who ended up being a roommate of mine for years, and he was the keyboard player in Scamp.
Mm.
And he replaced Paul Schaefer.
Oh, is that?
Go to the Letterman show.
Mm-hmm.
Because Paul played the solo on Goodbye to You.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, which maybe I don't know if people know that or not, but it's pretty funny.
He's done a lot of things, because I know he, he also had ties to Saturday Night Live and the Blues Brothers. He was originally, I know the guy Murph and the Magic Tones that they had in the movie. Paul was unavailable for the movie, so they brought him in as part of the band for the movie. But I know Paul, he's done a lot of things.
Oh, yeah. But Letterman was a great gig for him.
Oh, sure.
But Benji, ended up replacing him on keyboards.
Mm-hmm.
And then Ray Gomez was the guitar player in the band with Zach, who kind of started the band, Zach Smith. And Ray had left for whatever reason, or I don't know what happened there. And Benji suggested me, and also I'd met Ian McDonald from Foreigner.
Sure.
When I first moved up to New York, maybe this is going to get confusing. There's so many things that go into this.
Mm-hmm.
But when I first moved to New York, I auditioned for Ian's band, and he wanted lead singer and guitar player. And I
sure.
sing a lot more now than I did back then. But he kind of, I didn't end up getting it. That wasn't quite the lead singer he was looking for that band.
Mm-hmm.
But for a guitar player for Scandal, he was friends with them, and he had recommended me as well. So between him and Benji, I think that's kind of happened. And it wasn't an audition per se. I went over to Zach's, who was the guy that put the band together and kind of found Patty or whatever and organized the band. And I went to his apartment where he had a little studio, and we recorded and wrote a little bit together.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were doing that first record. And the first thing that I did, I went in the studio. And if I guess I did an audition, my audition was I played all of the guitars on Goodbye to You.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I just did it, it was in Media Sound. That was a studio that I'd worked in a lot with Benji, doing all these demos and stuff before this happened.
Oh, I see.
Pretty well. And I ended up playing on the rest of that EP. We recorded a lot more songs than an EP for that first record.
Mm-hmm.
But they decided to make an EP, which was not a new thing, but not something that was that normal back then. And so I played on those songs, and actually they did the video for Goodbye to You, but I didn't get the call to be in the video, but I had played all of the guitars on it.
Right.
That always, matters. So then that happened, the video came out, and then, we started recording that record around May of '82, and then I remember in September, there were calls. They were like, we're going to go out and do Solid Gold and American Bandstand, Dick Clark, Laugh Tracks, and even some other, like a lot of TV shows out in LA. And they called me to do that.
Okay.
So I went out and did that, and they were all lip sync. As it turned out. They bass on those because the bass player couldn't make it. He was on tour with a band that he was playing with at the time. This is probably way more story than you want.
No. I love it.
It's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So we did all of those TV shows, and then Goodbye to You as a single kind of took off a bit. And then before we knew it, maybe in October, we were getting ready to go out on tour. Mm-hmm. And we literally, they gave us a budget, and we went down to Sam Ash, and I bought 200-watt Marshalls,
Mm-hmm.
Out touring with, and Zach bought whatever he bought, and everybody else, and we rehearsed for a little bit and went out and toured, and pretty much didn't come home for a year.
Mm-hmm.
Or so.
Who were you touring with?
Well, the first band we toured with was Adam Ant.
Is that right? Adam Ant. No kidding.
Right. Which is a bit of an odd pairing for Scandal, or maybe not. I don't know. It was the 80s,
Yeah.
but that was interesting. So we started with him. And when it began, We didn't even have a tour bus yet. We were in a Winnebago.
I love it.
2 or 3 weeks in Winnebago, everything was falling down, falling apart. And we slept in there. I mean, everybody didn't have a bunk. We were all just laid on this one thing together, and slept. It was crazy. It was crazy.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
But then we got a tour bus, and then we went on to do tours. We went out with Hall & Oates for a while, and that's when they were doing their H2O tour. So then we were doing arenas,
Mm-hmm.
and John Cougar Mellencamp or whatever his name was back then, went out with the Kinks.
Mm-hmm.
And a bunch of people, and it just went from one thing to another, and then there'd be some TV shows in between.
Wow.
It happened quickly, like that.
So I'm going to delve into this a little bit. So Adam Ant, you started with that, and then I guess as the tour went on, you moved on to, was it like a segment of the tour with Adam Ant, and then you moved on to work with Hall & Oates?
Yeah, we just did,
Yeah.
I don't know how many weeks with Adam Ant. And when we were with him, we were playing theaters, like night theaters around the country, like House Theater. I remember we played in places like that.
Mm-hmm.
Then when we were with Hall & Oates, it was arenas, like 20,000 people.
Oh, wow. Wow. What were some of the ones, like, what part of the country was that in? Were you like East Coast, West Coast?
Everywhere. And in Canada.
Oh, okay. Okay. Wow.
I don't know if it was in that year, probably was, because we went to Japan a number of times. We did fairly well over there. So we probably went to Japan 5, 6 times. I don't know how many over the course of, a little bit. So we as well.
Interesting. And so yeah, and that's was, peak time. Really, Adam Ant was very, very popular at the time. Hall & Oates was huge. And then you would after that, you had mentioned after Hall & Oates, you went on to who was after that, you said?
John Cougar Mellencamp.
John Cougar, yeah, that was a big album for him too.
His name at that time. And he was, he had Jack and Diane.
Yes.
So that was a pretty big song. I mean, we were playing big places with them as well.
Mm-hmm.
There were others and everything's in between. I mean, I remember one real highlight. Again, we did a lot of TV shows. We did a show called Rock and Roll Tonight once. My favorite guitar player is Jeff Beck.
Yeah.
He was on the show, and he was on the show with Les Paul.
Oh, was that right? Wow.
Les Paul and Jeff Beck. And actually, Billy Squire was on that show as well.
Okay, yeah.
About at the top of whatever he was doing, and they included him in that, like a 3-way little segment they did where they played guitar together. I remember every time Jeff Beck started playing, Les Paul would pull a chord out of his guitar. Les is a funny guy. I've met him a number of times over the years. He's pretty cool. He makes you feel like he's known you forever, and you're his best friend, first of all. And he was just such a great guy.
I've had a number of people on the show that have just told me great things about meeting him,
Yeah,
so.
he was awesome. I mean, I know he didn't remember me, but I would come up to him like he was a club he used to play at Fat Tuesdays. And, and I would go there and take some of my friends there, whatever. And he'd come up to me like, hey, what's hot? What's happening? You want to know what I was doing, all this stuff. I'm like, I don't think he even remembers me, or maybe, maybe he does. But he was just that kind of guy. He was very, very cool guy, and a great player right up until the end for him.
Well, I think to have one of the most iconic guitars in rock and roll history named after you, you got to have something going on.
Yeah. Oh, he was a great guitar player.
Oh,
and
I mean, yeah.
Up to his 80s and beyond.
Oh, he sure did. I think he just passed away like in the last 10 years or so.
Maybe 10 years.
Yeah.
He was in the early 90s, I believe, and still playing. And it was at another club, and I'd not gone to that one. I forget what it was called. It was on the east side in Manhattan. But always a lot of people would get up and jam with him, play with him, like kind of famous guitar players, whatever. He'd bring people in. But he had the same band that he'd had for a long time. That other guitar player he was really good and solid, and the whole band, it was cool. But anyway.
That's interesting. That's really interesting. And I kind of like your what you were telling me about your early travel accommodations, because I can really identify with that. When we were playing around Baltimore and DC, in the bands I was in. And I'll just briefly tell you, whenever we would get a job in New York, we go to CBGB's, we would play there. And we
there.
a bunch of us were in a rider truck. We would take a rider truck up, put a bunch of couches in the back, have all our gear back there, and us and 20 of our closest friends would go up there. And by the grace of God, nobody died from carbon monoxide poisoning or anything like that, or we didn't get pulled over for suspicion of human trafficking or anything like that either. But I think we've all been there before.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, thank God we finally got the tour bus. But the first tour bus we had wasn't a new one. It was like some vintage old crazy thing,
Mm-hmm.
But it was okay. It was nice.
Right. A band I just had on out of a younger group, Lilac, out of Georgia. They just bought prison transporting vans as their road vehicles, and they had to be careful because they didn't want they had to be careful not to lock themselves into it, because they didn't lock from the you couldn't get out from the inside because they hadn't changed the locks over yet, to where you could open from the inside. They had them so the prisoners were still locked in, and they had to be very careful about that because I don't know how they would get themselves out.
Get locked into your bus. That's crazy.
Yeah. That's a Spinal Tap story right there,
There you go.
Yeah. So you had with Scandal, you had mentioned, Goodbye to You. I remember that very, very, I mean, that's, stuff I liked in high school. I was in high school at the time. And Solid Gold, that was just a show that was, I used to watch that on Sundays with,
Yeah, we did that a few times or more.
Was Marilyn McCoo the host?
She might have been there.
Yeah.
I just remember the Solid Gold Dancers.
Yes, the Solid Gold Dancers. Yeah, absolutely. That was a group right there. They were I think I did a story, somebody do you remember the movie what was it? It was a Halloween movie in the 80s. Fastway did a lot of the songs to it. Trick or Treat. The guy who played the bad guy in the movie was a Solid Gold dancer, and I forget what the fellow's name was, but I heard that story from another guest a while back. But yeah, Solid Gold. I just interviewed Zebra. We were talking about the King Biscuit Flower Hour. Do you remember that one?
No.
Yep. American Bandstand with Dick Clark. I mean, God, that had. Did you meet him?
This guy, Dick Clark, so nice.
Yep, really seemed like it. Seems like he was the real deal,
But one thing that was really cool about it, I remember the very first, we did that show a number of times. We did a New Year's show one year, but it wasn't the thing on Times Square. It was, filmed in December.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Rick Derringer was there. I forget, there were other people there. But anyway, the one thing I remember the first time we did the show, you really made a point to introduce every single person in the band and have him say something even. But he just wanted people to have, that space.
Mm-hmm.
Time. He made a point. He obviously made a point to do that in a cool way.
That's really great. I mean, how often do you get to appear on, that show? And, he made sure that everybody just didn't get breezed over. Everybody had at least their moment of glory being on that show. That's really that's a big thing for a host to do.
Seconds of glory. And I remember the first time we did a show, a really silly, stupid thing Patty did. She did the thing, she pointed down at his shirt like there's something there, and then he's like, that was crazy.
That is. And yeah, look, what's that? Blue? Yeah, I remember that. Used to fall for that when I was 3 years old too,
When he was however old.
Right. And so that's great. I mean, just that's really that must have been such an experience being able to do that and go on these shows and everything. And then The Warrior came out. Now that was another big song. Did that come out? You had mentioned that, Goodbye to You, and that was on an EP. Was
Right.
The Warrior on the next album, or was that on that EP as well?
We had a different drummer. We had Tommy Price played drums on that.
Mm-hmm.
And the rest of the band was the same. But that was, the band was somewhat changing. We did that record in Electric Lady Studio in New York, and Billy Idol was doing Rebel Yell record in the same studio. So we'd see those guys every day. And our drummer, Tommy Price, ended up playing on the song Rebel Yell.
Oh, is that right?
And it ended up leaving the band and going off and playing with Billy after that.
Is that right? Is that right? Wow, swiped your drummer right out from under you there, huh?
That was what ended up happening, however it happened. But we would see those guys every day, just walk on breaks at the studio, maybe go down to a local bar or something.
Mm-hmm. What were they like? Good guys?
The only guy that I kind of got to know was Steve, the guitar player. Steve. Billy, I mean, I met, didn't really hang out.
Mm-hmm.
And Tommy, of course, was our drummer. So he and I were very good friends.
Mm-hmm. Well, Steve Stevens was a New Yorker, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think he grew up in Queens.
Right. I remember reading about that. Yeah. So he was native to New York, and obviously, was up there. Okay, so Scandal, after a couple of years, Scandal, kind of went its way, and you worked with the band CRIES after that. And Ed Shockley, his brother Michael, and you had some success overseas with this, according to your bio here, but it was never released here in America. But tell me about this project a bit here. I know you had a couple of things that you had released now that may have been from that era, but
just after that era. I mean, I'll tell you the story real quick. Whatever. I mean, we had that Rise record out. It was right when BMG, the Bertelsmann Music Group, German company, had bought RCA, maybe Arista. I don't know, several fairly big labels. They kind of took over. BMG did it at that time, right as this was happening. And the guy who signed us was the German guy that came to New York, and he liked our band a lot, Heinz Henn. I'm still in touch with him. It's funny, he's now retired, but he signed this, and then the people at RCA, they were all kind of like, you're not going to tell us what to do. It felt like that kind of thing. He wanted this record to come out and do this and that. And for that to happen in America, one of the labels that they had bought, RCA or one of the others, had to pick up on it and get behind it. And it didn't really. So the record just ended up coming out in Europe and did fairly well in Germany, or, it had a little bit of success in Germany, little something. That was happening. And the other thing was there was two lead singers in the band. Ed Shockley, do you know him or who he is?
Oh, I've heard the name. Refresh me.
He grew up in Lewisdale, right next to me. I've known him since I was a kid. That's a long time. He's one of my best friends. But he was one of the two singers in the band. And the other singer was actually the guy that started the band. And the record company really wanted Ed to be the lead singer. So after that record, they basically said, we want to keep Ed and me signed to the label.
Oh, okay.
That's how we went on to write 35, 40 songs in the year after that. And we got paid to do it, which was nice. I had a little studio in my apartment up in New York. And that's what's going to be, get to that Shockley Mack record that you just listened to. That's where these songs came from. We wrote these songs thinking Ed and I were going to put our own record out back then.
No, I see.
The late 80s or whatever it was.
I see. Yeah, okay. And then you went on to work with Joe Cocker and Paul Young. I've heard some stories about Joe Cocker. What was that experience like for you?
It was great. That was in 1989. And that was when Ed and I were doing this. And of course, I'm like, I had the opportunity to do this tour, and I'm like, I got to go do this. I didn't want to, could have stayed and not done it, but I ended up doing it. But anyway, when I started to do that, he was going to record a live record like 2 weeks after I got in the band. So I had to learn like 45 songs. I'm like, oh my God, I had my Sony Walkman, I think, whatever I had, and listening to literally on the flight out. First gig was in Seattle, trying to remember all these songs. So, we went out and started, and they didn't want to rehearse with me because that was a big band. There's like 13, 14 people in that band, more girl singers, all kind of, 2 guitars, 2 keyboards. So we started playing, and we did this live CD, and we got the Memphis Horns came in and they played on it, and we recorded for like 2 weeks of gigs. Live CD came out. Long story short, again, but Joe Cocker was a great guy, super nice person.
Yeah, I've heard that about him. I've heard good things about him. I've heard some great stories about him too. Backstage.
I got stories about him too.
Yep.
But just nice stuff though, for sure.
Yeah, nice things, good-hearted, lighthearted, funny things too. It's kind of what I've heard. He's a good guy. And so at this time, I remember in the 80s, he had a hit song that was a duet with a lady. Was that the time you were in the band?
It was right after that, because I played acoustic guitar on that song.
Oh, okay. It was Joe Cocker, and it was from a movie, wasn't it?
Who?
No.
Who?
The song. Was it featured on a movie soundtrack?
Up here we belong. What that it?
Yeah, that's what I was asking. Yeah.
I can't remember the girl that sang with him on it. I can't think of her name right now.
Jennifer Warnes, maybe?
That sounds right.
Yeah. Okay. And so you were saying, you played acoustic guitar on that?
Yeah.
Oh, hey, that's great. And then you were with Paul Young around that time as well, too, as according to your bio.
Yeah, right after that.
And so you're saying that was probably around 90. You were out with Paul Young.
Yeah.
Yep. And you are mentioning in your bio too about appearing with Carson on the Johnny Carson show, and Leno as well. Tell me about those guys. Those are two of my favorites.
Well, I'm trying to remember, because I played on that show with Cocker and with Paul Young. Maybe just once with each of them. I think when I played with Joe Cocker, it was with Johnny right before he left in 1989, I guess. I remember the one funny thing that happened was the other guitar player in the band, Phil Grandy, and I were really good friends. And at sound check, we were just goofing off, and we went, and I sat in Johnny Carson's chair. And sat in the interview chair, and we took a little, like, somebody took pictures of this. Well, they came out and they're like, you don't sit in Johnny's chair. Or, we were bad boys. We didn't think, okay, I get it. And then they came out, with a sheet, and they put it over all this stuff.
Oh, that's great. Don't you love when something like that happens? You're the cause of it. You're the reason why that sheet was there.
Bad boys.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah, something about him that was interesting. If you ever watch any reruns of that show, whenever he had a pencil in his hand, the pencil always had erasers on both sides, because he was a drummer and he used to like to drum while the band was playing, going on and off of breaks.
I know he was always kind of drumming with the pencil, but I never noticed that it had erasers on both sides.
Yep. Yeah. Yep. And what about with Jay? Were you on there with Jay as well?
Yeah, that must have been with Paul, because I did the show twice. So he was really nice. made a point of, again, meeting everybody and all that. And those shows, you did play live on those shows. That wasn't any lip syncing stuff. Both of
Yeah.
both live.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those were they actually had, when there was a musical guest, and I guess you had an area, I guess, separate away from where I guess Doc Severinsen was, or I guess with Jay it would have been with Branford Marsalis and the band.
It was just a stage, I think, it was in front of where they were, basically, is my memory.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, I was wondering how they had that set up in there. Interesting.
It's not
And
that, that maybe it seems a little bigger on screen, or maybe not, but it's not a huge area.
yeah, that's what I've heard. It's not really a big area at all. It wasn't a big that big of a place. A lot of people have gone to see it that I know, and they said they were really surprised as to how really it wasn't that big of a place. Interesting. And you performed with Joe Cocker the day they tore down the Berlin Wall.
Yeah.
What was that like? Wow. I mean, did you see the wall coming down as you were playing, or?
Well, that would have been something.
Yeah.
But we were touring at the time, and we were, I think, maybe in Sweden or somewhere over there in Scandinavia.
Mm-hmm.
And remember, at that time, no one quite knew exactly when this might happen, but it seemed like it was going to happen. Because we were hearing, if this happens, they want to bring Joe in the band and do a concert, but we didn't know what day it was going to be or whatever. And all of a sudden it happened that day. And we got up at like 4:00 in the morning and went to the airport and got on a small private plane and flew into Berlin. And I remember we got on a bus and we went through the city, and we had motorcycle escorts. The city was going crazy on nuts, and we went, it was in an arena of sorts. I can't remember exactly how big, but a fairly big, place, venue that we did it. And all of the other artists that were there were all German artists, people I didn't know. And Joe was and we did Little Help from My Friends. That was the big thing. And all of the German artists came on stage, and I have a picture of us all. Everybody's got their arms around each other. Everybody's crying. It was that.
Wow. Interesting. And so, and there were a lot of, I think I kind of remember that time. If I remember, were the Scorpions there too?
No.
Okay. Maybe I'm thinking of something else then.
Probably. I mean, no one else there that I had heard of, really.
Okay. Interesting.
They were all German artists and just people I didn't know.
Okay. So after this, in the early 90s, you went on VH1's Bands Reunited. And how did this come about? So Scandal regrouped and you started playing again.
That was 2003, actually.
Oh, it was. Okay. All right. So tell us about the reunion.
Well, the way they did that show, I don't know if you've ever seen it. Benji King and I, again, there's a project that he had produced and I played guitar on with singer Russ Bonaguro. And as it turned out, we didn't know it, but MTV had contacted, or VH1 or whatever it was, contacted him, and he was in on it. And we scheduled this gig at the Bitter End. I don't know if you know that. It's a little club that's forever in Manhattan. And we were in this thing, and it was supposed to be for something for his record. And I remember we went up, and we were all wired for sound. We had little microphones. Because I remember going in the bathroom, and I'm sitting there, standing there, going to the bathroom with Russ, going, "This is cool. We're wired up for sound, We're microphone." Anyway, so we did Russ' show, and right after we did the show, all these people came in. And I don't know if you've ever been to the Bitter End. It's a very small club, and people came in, and I couldn't tell what was going on. I thought there was a fight at the bar. There was all this commotion. But what it was the host of that show, Bands Reunited, came in and there were lights, guys running around him with lights, and he's running in, they're filming in the cameras. And we're like, what in the world? And I didn't even heard of that show at that point. I wasn't even aware of it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Benji went. And they come up to you and they go, will you agree to do this gig where you go out to LA and you play a show? And that was pretty much it. We put you up for however many days, and if you sign the record, then you agree to it.
Mm-hmm.
They want us to do, and I did, and Benji did. But we were the first two in the band, and I'm thinking, well, Patty or Zach, they're probably not going to do this, because there was, whatever there was, but that situation, just didn't know how that might go. And everybody agreed to it. So we went out and we did that TV show. And then after that, our bass player had passed away, Ivan. So we had Kaz Salton. He played with Todd Rundgren and a bunch of people. I don't know if you know Chasm. He played bass with us. And right after we did the show, we were like, well, we might as well go out and tour a little bit, and do some dates. So we booked a tour through that year, and Chasm played with us. And then I think after that tour, we ended up getting, and Tommy Price played with us as well, even.
Oh, okay.
The whole crew was back together, minus Ivan, who had passed away. And then after that, we got a different drummer and bass player. I think Tommy was playing with Joan Jett or something, so he couldn't do it. And and we've been touring ever since. I mean, Patty and I, we played. We've had a couple of different people in the band, but we played right up until COVID. March of 2020, we were on a cruise ship, an 80s tour thing. Because I remember telling Patty, I'm like, because we didn't know what COVID was at that point. Like, is it I do now? But I'm like, should we really be doing this? Getting on a cruise? we're So we get on this cruise ship. Half of the band's canceled. It's supposed to be like Earth, Wind, and Fire. And
oh boy, wow.
And but some of the people were there. But anyway, not Taylor Swift, was that other Taylor? Staten Island. Anyway, I don't know. Taylor Dane.
Oh, yeah, Dane. Right.
So we did that little thing, and no one got sick, and we went home, and then the country was shut down.
Oh, I know. That was just such a time. Everybody got hit by that, and we found ways to get through it and survive. And I guess, the silver lining of a lot of that, I think for a lot of people, was the fact that you got a chance to really go back to the drawing board and write and put together things without the pressure of having to write and get out and perform it. You had this time on your hands now.
Time. That's when Ed and I did that record, that Shockley Mack record that you had listened to.
That was just a really, really well done album. You had mentioned in your bio, you started studying, or you actually, started studying more finger style guitar, and you went out there to study with some of the good players that you mentioned here, like Peter Finger, Pierre Ben Susan. French. Okay, I see it. Yeah. Doyle Dykes, Alex DeGrassi, and
that was a great thing. That was in 2003. That was actually the year that I did, the Scandal thing when Bands Reunited.
Oh, okay.
I did that whole thing, and then I put out my solo fingerstyle CDs, which is a whole other thing than Scandal rock music, as you know. It's just solo acoustic.
I'm sorry, I stepped on you. Go ahead.
I'm still very into doing that and continuing that.
I was listening, to the album. Really like it. I really like it. And I mean, I can hear. It was gosh, your old bandmate. God,
Ed Shockley.
Yeah, here I am. I'm losing my mind. Of course, yeah, Ed Shockley, that you had been working with, and of course, Shockley and Mack, and you you've got these songs together here. Now, who else? What I wanted to ask was who else is on the record?
It's pretty much just us. I mean, I played all the guitars. I played bass,
Okay.
drums. I play some keyboards. He played a little bit of keyboards.
Oh, okay. So it was just the two of you. You didn't have, it wasn't like a whole series of.
Per se. But the fun thing about that, for whatever it's worth, we had these songs that we felt pretty good about, that we've had since the late 80s or 1990s, somewhere in that frame. And we tried to record these songs with in the same spirit that we might have done them if we could have done them back then.
Okay, you're right.
We didn't try to modernize them or try to do them with where we are now as musicians, make it be something different. And that was fun to do that. And that's why, I've got a bunch of guitar solos on all the songs, which was what I was doing back then.
Yeah.
A little bit less of all that guitar solo stuff now. Not that I don't do it, but some of those songs have 2 or 3 guitar solos in them. So it's.
Yes, they do. Yeah, I was like just thinking about that as I was listening here. The one song I don't mind anymore. I heard a lot of slide guitar and picking in that, which was really nicely done. And the thing, I mean, you do have a lot of runs. You do have a lot of, I guess, like I said, runs, a lot of riffs in there, but they're very smartly done and very well placed. And they're not overpowering anything, but they're in there in very pleasing spots, very smartly placed, I will say. And just a couple of other things too. I was listening to the song Fight the Fight. I really enjoyed the double vocal on that. You had the lower end vocal was I thought it was kind of Thin Lizzy-ish, with some nice upper register vocals on top of it that really complemented it well. It wasn't a tight harmony, but it was very complimentary. Both parts were very complimentary of each other.
Cool. Well, thanks.
Yep. And, I was looking at another one I really enjoyed was Same Sun. At the beginning, you had, some, guitar, kind of reminded me of a cross between Spanish style and Western guitar. And then,
Well, there's 2 things happening. I'm playing fingerstyle on the acoustic, but on the electric guitar, I have a telly that has a B bender.
Okay.
This thing, I have the cheap version of it's called a hip shot, where you just kind of push the guitar against your hip and it bends the B string up a whole step.
Oh, right.
I'm using that a lot on there. But I had that guitar back in 89 or 90, whenever I wrote that song for my father, actually, who passed away in 1988.
Oh, okay.
So, but anyway, that's what that song's about. I wrote that one by myself.
Yep. And I like the solo in it. The solo I thought was kind of Santana-ish, and you had some very majestic parts in that. I thought, like a very just great majestic guitar parts, I thought. The vocals kind of reminded me of America a little bit.
Huh. It's interesting. Yeah.
I
I liked America, but I never was that influenced. I didn't think by them, but
yeah. And James for a Day was another one I really enjoyed. That sounded kind of Beatles-ish at the beginning, and then it sounded like you had some of those like Police-ish, reggae-ish strums in there.
I see that a lot of the sus2 chords, which I've always been fond of. I even used those a lot in Scandal.
Yes.
I snuck all that into the Warrior and Beat of a Heart and all that stuff. I was definitely influenced by the Police guitar playing.
Yeah, it sounded like, I mean, and again, that era, that was a huge time for the Police as well. And I even think they rubbed off on Rush at that time too.
I'm sure they did.
Yeah.
I'm aware of Rush, but I've never really listened to a Rush record, to be honest. For whatever reason.
Right, right. But around that era, they had the album Grace Under Pressure out, and they had a lot of those, and even a couple of songs before that had like a little bit of that reggae-ish chord in there, that that strum, that reggae kind of strum with the chord in there with the bass underneath of it and everything. And I really like the vocals are really well blended on James for a Day too. I mean, I could go on all day about your songs and everything here, but I just really, I mean, being a musician too, my ears go all over the place when I'm listening, and
those vocals to me, what I think about for myself, because I do arrange a lot of the harmonies and whatever that we do in songs. The Who,
yes.
I could see the Who being an influence for
Mm-hmm.
me.
I didn't think of that, but now that you're mentioning it, yes.
But
Yeah. So, well, again, kudos on a great album. Like I said, I really enjoyed it, and since I've gotten it, it's been in the car with me. I bought it. I try to make it a practice to buy as many of my guests' work as I can, because I believe in supporting. I believe in being supportive.
It's out there to be bought, and it's on Bandcamp, and it's on my website, Keith Mack net, or you just go to Bandcamp and you just put my name in. That's not on there quite yet, but by the time this comes out, because that's Shockley Mack, that's something different, that'll be on. Well, I think.
Yeah. I bought it off of iTunes. That's where I get a lot of my stuff, and like I said, very, very well done. I really enjoyed listening to it, and it was a real feast for the ears. All the things that you were putting in there. I just thought you really worked a lot of parts in there very smartly and very nicely, and just a really well done album. And I recommend, I highly recommend it. And we will have all the links and everything else to it in the show notes when we when we put the episode out. We'll have all your links and places where people can get the music and find out about your shows. We had mentioned a little bit earlier, have you ever had any Spinal Tap moments on stage? Anything go horribly? I know you'd mentioned a little funny story about the Johnny Carson desk, but you ever had anything go horribly wrong like Spinal Tap?
Maybe I have a little story here. I guess I can tell this one.
Okay, sure. That's fine with me,
When I was playing with Joe Cocker, it was right around that time of the Berlin Wall, and we were over in Scandinavia somewhere. And I remember Phil Grandy and I, the other guitar player in the band, were having breakfast in the hotel we were in, and Joe came down and sat with us. And he was such a nice, polite guy and great, and he was like, and I hadn't been in the band that long. Phil had been in the band longer. He was part of how I got in the band, part of it, So Joe sat down with the three of us, and he said, he actually asked us, me and Phil, he asked me, he said, do you mind, guys, if I switch your spot on stage, where you are? And let me just preface this with one thing Joe Cocker said to me, which was really cool. When I started playing in the band, he said, you don't have to play what's on the record at all. He said, just play something, that's good. And if it's good, that's cool, So preface it with that. So anyway, Joe sat down at breakfast with us, and he looked at me and Phil, he says, can I switch where you guys are on stage? At the time I was stage left, and Phil was kind of right next to Joe on stage. And Phil maybe was not, I don't know why Joe did it. Phil maybe was not real reliable on stage. He would kind of be getting in Joe's, I don't know, whatever. I don't know what was going on. Why I didn't ask Joe why. But so he switched. So we switched on stage. And the first night that we did a gig, there was a song that since Joe had said that, I played slide guitar on it, but there wasn't slide on the record. And so I'm playing, and it's behind him. It wasn't like a solo. It was like a, part behind his vocal. And I remember he's singing, and he looked back at me, and he had this look on his face. He just walked back to me, and I thought, oh my God, he hates this slide part that I'm playing. He never really heard it, maybe because I was over on the side of the stage a little more. And he walked right up to me, and he walked right past me, and he threw up right next to my amp. And it was just crazy. And then we were in Austria in front of 20,000 people. And he comes up to the crowd, and he was always so nice, and he was just apologizing. He's like, "I'm so sorry," to the crowd. He's like, the light, because he would sweat like crazy when we play, and he said, the lights and everything, it overheated me, and so so he didn't really dislike my slide party. Just had to get the thing. And he decided to do it right next to my amp, and then the crew had to come out and clean it up. It was kind of a Spinal Tap, something maybe.
Yeah. That's not the first story. I've had Bud Becker on the show. Bud Becker was, amongst other things, he was the talent coordinator at Hammerjacks, and in the 70s he was Joe Cocker's road manager. And I'd heard a number of other stories involving that from from him.
For whatever it's worth, at the time, all the time that I was out touring with Joe, it wasn't like he was drinking a lot.
Right.
Because he would hang out with us, and his wife was with us on the tour bus, and he would hang in the bar, and I'd have a guitar in the bar, and we'd jam, and he would sing songs and stuff. It was great. And he would go up late into his room and get in trouble with his wife, but he never drank a lot.
Yeah.
There was none of that. And that's not what this was about, I don't think.
Right. Well, this was years earlier too. So
70s, that's another story. And whatever. I don't know.
Yep. But yeah, and tell me about the time with Cyndi Lauper. I mean, I remember her well. Again, she was very, she was of that, the time, the 80s. And you had been with her on the road. It looks like it says 2013 here in your bio. Is that correct?
12 or 13. I was with her for like 3 years or so.
And what was that experience like? I mean, she's got a tremendous voice.
Yeah, she was great. It was fun, and she's fun and little kooky, like she seems. It's not like that's an act. That's kind of who she is, but in a really good way. She was nice and sweet. When we played hundreds of dates. I don't know how many. And she's a really hard worker, as well. I mean, she was taking like vocal lessons all over the world, wherever we were. I mean, we played in Israel, Australia, Japan a couple times. She was, warming up and practicing and doing things and trying to be at the top of her game at all times.
That's amazing.
In a really cool way. And that was fun.
That's great. And so you were touring with Cher. I've heard a lot of good things of. I've had a couple. Go ahead.
We opened up for Cher. I was.
Yeah, that's what. Right.
Yeah. No, I didn't play with Cher. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That's what I meant. You were playing with Cher. You like Cyndi. You were with Cyndi Lauper playing with Cher. Is what I. Yeah. And did a run of shows with her. I've heard a lot of great things about people that have toured with her too.
She was really nice. A really cool thing that she did was once a week she would plan an event for her band and our band and Cyndi's band. And we would do things. Sometime like we were in Chicago, she rented a boat, fairly big boat, just for both of our bands, and we went down the river, whatever it is, and we went out into the Great Lake and did things like that. One time she rented out an entire movie theater, and we all watched a film, did that. And one funny thing she did, she rented out a thing where we all did pottery.
Oh, wow.
Really into doing pottery. So we all did that and made something. I made a bowl for my dog and a wine glass for my wife, I think.
A nice team building experience, huh?
Cool like that. Just doing nice, fun things for people. You're out on the road, you're just constantly traveling. It's nice to have a moment to do something other than that.
Sure. Yeah. I had Joel Hoekstra as a guest recently, and
I know.
he's the guitar player for Whitesnake, TSO, and he also tours with Cher. And I've heard just a lot of great things about her from him too.
Yeah.
Yep. That's excellent. Well, you've really had so many great life experiences here, and a nice, a lot of just nice stories and everything from your career. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing these with us tonight. You know, so what I'd like to do is just give you an opportunity right now to I call this the shameless plug portion of the evening. You can shamelessly plug anything you'd like to shamelessly plug. Tell us where we can get or see or hear anything you got. And with all shamelessness included, no shamelessness spared. So go right ahead.
Well, I mentioned it earlier, and it's pretty much just, my website, Keith Mack, MACK.net. All my music's there, and I have like couple of fingerstyle acoustic records there. I have the one with Ed Shockley is there, and the moment you didn't mention that one. That's just a solo acoustic record that I have there that I would like people could check that out. And Bandcamp.
Mm-hmm.
Those are pretty much the two places to go and do it.
And how about live performances?
Right now, what I'm doing is just solo acoustic local gigs in the Rehoboth Beach, Delaware area, and Ocean City, Maryland, and in between Lewis, Delaware, where I can, kind of play a lot of things. I mix in a lot of the fingerstyle stuff I do, my originals, and then I do covers as well. I mean, I'm playing in bars,
Mm-hmm.
We'll see if I get out there again with Patty. We talked about going out this past summer. That just didn't end up happening for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see where that leads.
Sure. Well, folks, if you are in the Rehoboth, Delaware area, or anywhere else that you're playing, keep an eye on the website. You say keithmack.net.
Yep.
And look under, you have your shows listed on there. Come out and see them. Rehoboth is a fun town. It's a nice town. It's up the coast from Ocean City a ways, not quite as big as Ocean City, not quite as crazy, but a very nice seaside town. It's a great place. Come up and see them.
Yeah, I mean, I've got an every Wednesday gig I do through the winter, which is really a fun, nice thing. It's right on the boardwalk. They call it the Plaza Boardwalk Pub, Victoria's Plaza. It's every Wednesday.
Every Wednesday. So come on out on Wednesday, go to the website. His music is listed there. Download the music. It's well done. Coming from me, because I listened to it, I bought it, and it's great stuff, folks. It's great stuff. I would say, you're an excellent musician. You've put out, some excellent material. Well worth having and well worth listening to, folks. So make sure you check out keithmack.net. And thank you again for being with us tonight, Keith. It's been a real pleasure. I just love your stories. Just such an interesting career you've had. And I thank you for coming and sharing this with us tonight.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, okay, folks. Well, it's been, we've had an evening with Keith Mack here. Make sure you check out his website, and the links will be in the show notes of the episode. And we will see you next time. Thanks again for tuning in. Hello, listeners. We at Fowl Players Radio thank you for all of your support over the past 10 seasons and nearly 300 episodes. We would like to encourage you to keep listening and spread the word. Audio versions of all episodes can be found on our main website, fowlplayersradio.com, as well as on many of the other platforms you can see here. You can find all of our Season 9 and 10 episodes, as well as some best-of episodes and shorts on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/@fowlplayersradio. Be sure to hit the subscribe button to get alerts when new episodes are released. No matter what platform you choose to listen, you can help us greatly by hitting the subscribe button and giving us an honest review. You can also help us by supporting us at patreon.com/foulplayersradio or at buymeacoffee.com/foulplayerw. Your support makes it possible for us to continue to be your one-stop shop for all of your pop culture needs. Be sure to follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter for new episode announcements and news and updates on all of our guests. Thank you, and enjoy this episode. And thanks again for tuning into our episode tonight with Keith Mack. He had a lot of great stories of his time with Scandal, Cyndi Lauper, Joe Cocker, Paul Young, and I really enjoyed having him on, and I hope you enjoyed his stories and telling us a bit about his career. It was a really great episode, I thought. His website is keithmack.net, and you can find his music, bio, performance dates, and a lot of other things there. Remember, the Fowl Players of Perryville are back in action after our winter hiatus, and we are having a number of upcoming shows on the Western Maryland Scenic Railroad, Fifth Company Brewing in Perryville, Maryland, the Van Diver Inn coming up, and others. If you are interested in seeing a show, our website is foulplayersofperryville.com, and if you are interested in booking us, foulplayersperryville@yahoo.com or 443-600-0446 to call us. Every Tuesday from 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern Time is the Back of the Rack, the Michael Spedden Show on 97underground.com, where we feature songs you forgot you liked, classics that never die, interviews with up-and-coming and classic beloved bands. Go to 97underground.com and download the free app today and listen to us wherever you may go. We thank you for watching and listening to Fowl Players Radio. Our main website is foulplayersradio.com. Our YouTube channel is youtube.com/@foulplayersradio. And remember to support our guests in their endeavors. Links to their books, albums, tickets to their shows, and much, much more can be found in the show notes of each episode. We thank you again for tuning in, and we will see you all next time.